There was a study done back in 2015 that suggested something pretty bizarre. The average attention span of a human is less than that of a goldfish. It's certainly a thought-provoking statement, even if that conclusion is a bit misleading, because where the study got its idea of the 8-second attention span for humans is the average time a person spends on a web page before going somewhere else. That's not a particularly thorough metric. So it is pretty easy to dismiss this study as being either unhelpful or inaccurate, probably both. But I do still find it a bit thought-provoking. Because while maybe our attention is not that bad, I do think it is possible that the type of attention or focus that we have in the internet age has changed from what it used to be. Because if you look at resources like social media platforms, places on the internet that have high traffic volume, they tend to be places that are very good at maintaining attention. And these giant social media platforms use advanced algorithms backed by no telling how much money's worth of research to keep you on the platform for as long as possible. Effectively, what these platforms do is babysit your attention span so that you never want to leave. And I know I've been interchanging focus and attention, but if we're going to look at a definition, I think what best encapsulates what I'm talking about is a definition for concentration, which is the action or power of focusing one's attention or mental effort. This combines focus and attention under one umbrella, that being concentration. But this is a gaming channel. Why are we talking about social media and its effect on attention span? I think that the type of attention that we develop can impact our ability to play games effectively. If your focus or attention is primarily trained off of social media platforms, then you're very used to being constantly engaged by the platform itself in order for your attention to stay up. Which means if it starts to become boring, you're likely going to move on and do something else. And it's that attribute right there that can potentially cost you wins in a gaming scenario. As an example, take a battle royale. From the several battle royales that I've played, a lot of people, in fact, the majority of every lobby, tends to do something called hot dropping, where they take a large POI that's very popular, that a lot of people like to drop at, and they just drop at that. So you'll have like a third or half the lobby in one concentrated area, which odds are there will not be a weapon for every player to pick up in that small area, so you're effectively rolling the dice hoping you get lucky. And even then, there's opponents around literally every corner, and if you make any amount of noise, you could get sniped in the back, basically. It's not a very ideal playstyle for trying to win a game, but it can be a lot of fun sometimes, and in like public matches, I could see why a lot of people would do it. It's just a lot of people do that in ranked matches too, which makes absolutely no sense. Because typically in a ranked lobby, you're trying to rise up in ranks. And usually to do that, you have to survive matches long enough, because a lot of ranked systems will give you additional points for surviving longer than other players. And if you're hot dropping, there's a very good chance you're one of the first players out. And if you didn't pick up a weapon and you just get gunned down, then you're probably going to end up losing points rather than gaining any, which will make the ranked grind nearly impossible. But why would somebody intentionally go for a higher risk strategy that rarely ever pays out? Well, I think attention plays a big role in that. Because when you're so used to being spoon-fed information and be constantly stimulated, then you're going to play a game the same way, where you will want to constantly be in combat, pushing fights, so on and so forth. Being aggressive even when you don't have to be aggressive or should not be aggressive. And I have seen that way too many times in Battle Royale games. You get this teammate that just runs off on their own and tries to 1v3, like they expected that to go well. It's not about making good decisions at that point. It's about feeding the attention so you don't get bored. Because you could hold your attention for hours on end, as long as what you're engaging in keeps your interest that long. And that is likely based on the training of your attention. which if you spend 3 to 4 hours a day scrolling through TikTok, it is very likely that is affecting your attention in some form or fashion. Not that your attention is now down to 8 seconds, but rather your attention no longer has as much room for moments that are dull, uneventful, and or boring. And sometimes to actually win a game, you have to do the boring things. So instead of always pushing fights in a battle royale, maybe actually hold the ring position that you have and keep other players off of it. Sometimes that's boring, it's not always fun, and it can even sometimes feel lame. But the focus of a game is twofold. You want to have fun with the game, obviously, but you also want to at least try to win. And oftentimes I see players just throw matches because they're having to feed that constant need for stimulation. Otherwise, their attention's out. And when they're no longer focused because they're in a boring state of the game, then all the other fundamentals that they have start to dissipate. So with that, is there any way to better, say, train focus to be able to handle more boring things? Well, there's several ways. Things such as mindfulness training, which is like meditations and whatnot. There are focus and attention training games that are usually made by some scientist or whatever, which a lot of those can be pretty boring, which is why it takes actual focus to get through them. And even lifestyle changes like proper diet, sleep, exercise can also improve your ability to focus on things. But I want to give you an example of what I do to try to improve my focus. This is a very simple exercise. So on your screen right now, you should see a goldfish. And what I want you to do is take one particular spot, like one pixel of that goldfish, and I want you to stare at it. You can blink while you're staring, but just don't move your eyes off of that exact pixel of the goldfish. And I want you to try and do that for as long as possible. Now, if you're like me, then after a few seconds, you're going to start feeling very uncomfortable, maybe even nervous, and you're going to feel your eyes wanting to move to another spot. Just try and keep it focused on that one little bitty spot for as long as possible. When I first started doing this, I could barely go a few seconds, but I am now able to handle doing an exercise like this for up to 5 minutes comfortably. The goal of this exercise is to give you better control over what you focus on. And by having this better control over what you focus on, it'll make it easier for you to not be so impulsive in a video game where you're just trying to push fights and keep up the dopamine rush. This will give you the power to be able to slow yourself down when you need to, thus being a more well-rounded, controlled player. And not every game benefits from this skill, I know that, but some do. Battle Royales definitely do. And you don't have to go overboard with this exercise. You don't need to develop the skill to be able to stare at one spot for an hour without moving your eyes. I think that is unnecessary. I would try to work it up to about 5 minutes. Maybe even 10 if you're ambitious. But you will notice a difference whenever you start to become comfortable with focusing on something that's boring. And that's effectively what this is training, where your eyes want to bounce around to all the different spots on, say, a goldfish or whatever object you may be using in a room to practice this exercise. It doesn't have to be a goldfish. But by forcing yourself to only focus on the one thing, you will develop better control over your mind and your focus. Now, I could go on about focus for hours probably, but I think this is a good stopping point. The focus of this channel is to take ideas and concepts and basically build out theories to apply these concepts to games, because all actions have consequences, good or bad, which is why optimizing your actions is very important when it comes to developing skills and a well-rounded lifestyle and playstyle. So if that sounds interesting to you, you know where the algorithm buttons are down below. And if you'd like to continue the discussion, the comment section will be open. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see y'all next time.